How do you fix the New York Knicks? Sort of like How to Train Your Dragon, but maybe even less realistic. We'll talk how the Knicks can go from far and away the worst shooting team at the rim in the NBA to something kind of decent. They're small and unathletic. How big of an issue is that? And getting up more threes to fix their offense. All that and more right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are Locked On Knicks, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And if you want to make some money, listen to Locked On Knicks. Yeah, I'm just kidding. We won't pay you. But if you want to become an everydayer, you will get smarter about the Knicks. And all you have to do is subscribe on YouTube and on your favorite audio podcast platform of choice. And that if you really want to show some loyalty, you can join our Subtext, where we will give you our latest thoughts after games, break down the latest Knicks rumors, and share maybe even some more creative Julius Randle slander than we're allowed to come up with on the podcast. But who would you be getting that from? I'm Gavin Shaw, a sometimes credentialed NBA reporter and a play-by-play broadcaster. He is Alex Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Strickland, the greatest Knicks website in the whole wide world. Check them out on all forms of social media at thestrick.land. We are fixing your New York Knicks today. Issue number one, Alex, shout out to our friend Jonathan Macri for the stat. I'm sure we'll be talking about it also on the excellent Knicks Film School podcast. He pointed out the Knicks are not only 30th in the NBA in their efficiency at the rim, but the gap between them and the 29th ranked team is the same as the gap from the 29th ranked team to the 15th ranked team. So they are like on an island, Alex, in terms of not being able to finish at the basket. This is a team that boasts the guy who had the best field goal percentage in NBA history, Mitchell Robinson, who is struggling to do much of anything outside of rebound, where he is better than anyone who's ever existed, not named Will Chamberlain or Bill Russell. So far this year, Julius Randle, who we diagnosed all of his issues on Monday, he's a basket case right now. And Jalen Brunson, I think, is a product of all those other things going wrong and the threes not really dropping. He has not been his normal self around the basket, at least until last week's Milwaukee Bucks game. And we should note we're recording this before the Clippers game, so maybe all these issues got fixed and you'll never see this podcast. But Alex, how did the Knicks start fixing their issues at the rim?
Yeah, chances are if people are listening to this, things are not all fixed yet. But I don't want to just say, just keep doing it, because obviously some things are not going right. They're dead last in finishing. Again, you already noted, they're so far in last place that the gap from 29th to 15th is the same as it is from the Knicks to 29th. But so they're at 50% right now, which is just horrific at the rim. I mean, you should never, as a team, be shooting 50% at the rim. It should be 60% minimum. I mean, that still places you among the worst teams in the league if you're shooting 60% at the rim as a team. So I feel like it feels kind of weird that I'm saying that the Knicks should be getting to the rim maybe more. But I kind of think that's the case. Right now they're getting to the rim 27th most in the NBA, so 27.1% of the time per clean the glass. And yet their free throw rate is 13th in the NBA, which they're making. So the free throw rate by cleaning the glass standards is defined as how many free throws made per 100 possessions. So they're making 19.6 free throws per 100 possessions right now. So of course that takes out their free throw percentage as well. That takes that out of the equation, because this is just strictly talking about how many free throws are they making per 100 possessions. Doesn't take into account how many they could be making, which is more than that number by a decent amount. But it takes into account just hard number. How many are they making? They're 13th in the NBA in that, while being second to last in the NBA in free throw percentage at just over 70%. So even if they can only get to 75% from the free throw line as a team, they would probably be about top 5 in that category, just based off the fact that if you make 5% more of your free throws, you could get that number up to, I don't know, 23, 24 free throws made per 100 possessions. And then all of a sudden that swings a couple of these games the Knicks have been in. Like, even for as bad as they played the other night, when they lost by 6 to the Bucks, they were right in that game up until the end, and a few more free throws made could have completely changed that around. And the way you get those free throw opportunities is continuing to attack the rim, and perhaps even doing it more until your shot just comes around. Now, I think that some of that has to do with the fact that RJ Barrett has been out these last couple games, and he was probably juicing that number a decent amount, and they're definitely getting to the rim way less without him, because that's been one of his bread and butters this year. And he's probably a big reason for why that free throw rate is so high so far this year, because he's been a free throw drawing machine as well. But yeah, I mean, they didn't exactly crush it last year either. The Knicks, like, they were 65.1% at the rim, which I think was still fairly low in the grand scheme of things in the NBA. But if they could even just get back to that level plus keep up their free throw rate, I think they'd be in really good shape. And I mean, saying just get back to that level, that's like, okay, just improve it by 15 points, which is crazy. But that would bring them back to about where they were last year and put them, maybe just outside of that top 2/3 of the NBA. I think they were like 21st last year in finishing at the rim, and it worked okay for them.
Yeah, well, Alex,
yeah.
just real quick, part of the reason why that was fine is because they were second in attempts, right? And they got like misses would be dunks for Mitchell Robinson or Julius Randle putbacks so often. And that looks like 50%, but it's the same as 100% if you're getting an offensive rebound and putting it back in.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think that's the key. I mean, just do it more, just don't be afraid to, I guess, I don't know. And I can understand if they feel like they're not getting calls, or maybe Jalen Brunson feels a little tentative because he's worried that he's going to get slapped with another flopping foul for getting fouled and reacting to it. But I don't know. I think that they need to focus more on getting there, and whether they finish or not, at least keep trying to draw contact, because we've seen that, like, that helps for them if they could just make their free throws, which they were truly terrible at to start the season, but have, as a team, gotten a decent amount better at as the season's gone on so far. So I think just keep attacking. Like, I hope that they don't abandon that or get too afraid to get inside for whatever reason as a team collectively, because or start settling for like floaters and stuff like that rather than getting all the way in, because I think it's going to be so key that they leverage the fact that they are able to draw free throws, and that applies to pretty much every player on the team, but especially the core three of Brunson, Barrett, Randall.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I just looked it up. They're still second in the NBA in rim attempts per game. So they're, at least for now, to your point, they are sticking with it. But I don't think that like does anything to diminish your point, because law of averages would tell you that like eventually they're going to start shooting decently enough around there. And especially someone like Mitchell Robinson, like he is going to get more dunks as time goes along. But I think like Mitch is almost, and it's weird because he's obviously like the guy who like does the least to get those. Well, I shouldn't say that because the offensive rebounding is a lot, but like has the least game, right? Like he is just like getting rebounds and going back up. Like why should he be finishing worse than he did last year? And part of it is having like now like a 2, or it's RJ missed 2 games, 3 games, like sample size with no RJ Barrett, who's the best at getting him lobs. But to me, the biggest thing is just how much more the lane is clogged this year. And that's because it's something I referenced on Monday's podcast. Like no one is guarding Julius Randle from 3. No one for the longest time has been guarding RJ Barrett from 3. And unless those guys are respected, like the lane is just going to be packed. And even when the Knicks get offensive rebounds and Mitchell Robinson like does like God's work to get offensive rebounds over 2, 3, 4 guys sometimes, like when he's surrounded by 3 people, he's not going up for dunks anymore. And a lot of times like this year, we've even seen Mitchell Robinson get blocked, which I don't really remember happening that much in his career. And it's a testament to just how many bodies and limbs are around the basket at all times. So I think in Mitch's case, like something he can do is like continue to like, and we've seen him do a better job of this year, get rebounds and then spray it out. And he like the Bucks game, he found Quentin Grimes for another 3 doing that, which was really encouraging. But the only way this ever changes in a meaningful way is if the Knicks get shooters on the floor who are actually respected. And Julius Randle is, like I said it last podcast, but it all kind of comes back to this. Like he's simply going to have to start taking and making shots from distance at some point. RJ Barrett is going to have to get his 3-point volume up, as we'll get into in the third segment. And to me, like that is where the rim efficiency will ultimately come from, if defenses even give the Knicks the slightest respect from the perimeter. But it's also on Tom Thibodeau to like occasionally close games with a smaller lineup and have Jalen Brunson, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes, Josh Hart, and Mitchell Robinson as your closing five, and trust that a team that right now is third in the NBA in defensive rating isn't going to completely fall apart on that end because Mitchell Robinson isn't out there. And again, there are going to be matchups like we referenced it with the bench version of that, like where Josh Hart will have trouble. By and large, it's not going to be an issue. And if Julius Randle plays the way he's supposed to, like he'll inevitably be out there. But to me, like for now, I think it's a little bit less of him on the floor and just more of him shooting threes when he is on the floor.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Gavin. And I think that another thing that we might want to talk about, and this might turn into more of a long-term issue, is whether the Knicks have maybe banked a little too much on small ball without having the athleticism to back it up. So we're going to discuss that in the next segment, as well as talking about how, as well as getting to the rim, they should just keep shooting threes as ways to hopefully improve this team throughout the season and maybe beyond, maybe through the trade deadline if they decide to make some sort of moves there. But right now, I have to real quick remind everybody that today's show is brought to you by our good friends at Prize Picks. And Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. So instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, and trust me, there are plenty of sharks and whales and every other type of underwater creatures that like to play these games. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and just watch the winnings roll in. And with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. That is pretty crazy. So not only can you make multi-sport entries now, but now you can make entries that include multiple players from multiple different leagues. That's really, really fun to me. And if you want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schulz, you can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. And my favorite thing, Prize Picks offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, Gavin, we're back in trying to fix the Knicks. And this maybe gets a little more big picture here. And I'll throw it to you because this was your point here that you wanted to get to, and I'm pretty well in agreement with you. But are the Knicks maybe a little too small?
So this started percolating in my mind during the Pelicans game where they were just getting smothered at points, and you were watching Josh Hart like do his best on Brandon Ingram. Brandon Ingram literally like you would with a little kid on a Nerf hoop, just shoot over him. And we saw night one with Quentin Grimes on Jason Tatum. We even saw like Jalen Johnson just like I forgot, maybe it was Hart, maybe it was Grimes, just bullied the crap out of someone for the Atlanta Hawks. Jalen Johnson shouldn't be doing that to anyone. No, he's been playing better this year. He's a nice young player. But anyways, you get my point, Alex. Like the Knicks at times just almost look like at all time, like if you were just going to assemble like the college basketball all-stars, like Kevin Pittsnoggle type of dudes, and you're going to throw them out there like against an NBA team, and it would be cool for a while, and they'd be fighting and they'd be scrappy, and then eventually the NBA team was like, wait, we're bigger than you, we're more athletic than you, we're more talented than you. And I've been sitting with this for a few days, and then I was kind of like, wait, like let's look at the Miami Heat, right? Like the model of success in the Eastern Conference for the last few years. I don't think they're any more athletic than the New York Knicks are. And like maybe they are one key spot in that Bam Adebayo is just like a stopper come playoff time and is just so incredibly flexible and dominant in a way that even Mitchell Robinson isn't. And that maybe makes up for athletic deficiencies at other points. You could argue they did their best when Tyler Hero was like at least defensively, like one of their worst athletes, like was playing less. But they play all these dudes like Max Strus, Duncan Robinson. I know I'm just listing white guys, which is maybe a cop out, but like guys who are not like fantastic athletes, and they survive and they win over and over again. And yet when they get to the finals, and not that the Nuggets were this overwhelmingly athletic team, but what the Nuggets are is really freaking big, right? Nikola Jokic is a mountain. Aaron Gordon is built. Michael Porter Jr. is like 6'10" at power forward and just can shoot over anyone. Jamal Murray is 6'5". KCP 6'5". And it's not like athleticism helps, especially if you're small. It's great as a compensatory measure. But at the end of the day, skilled size is the direction the league is going. You can look at the Nuggets. You can look at the Pelicans. You can look at a team like the Thunder. We're going to have Chet Holmgren playing the 4 for a while. Like, heck, we'll see it tonight with Victor Wembanyama, Alex. Like, that's the direction the league is going. And like when I watch the Knicks, like it doesn't kill them, but there are just stretches where you're like, they can just get bullied. And they have bigger issues right now. But I'm thinking about it in a long-term championship sense. And obviously, like in some ways it's stating the obvious, because like they need an extra star to win something big. But it just feels like that there are going to be matchups where that is just such a substantial issue in the playoffs. And maybe they were lucky to avoid those types of matchups last year. And maybe that made them look a little bit closer to a championship than we think. So I can offer up some solutions, but I want to get your thoughts on that first.
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of concerned about this since the preseason, and or since the offseason, I should say, where all offseason was like, I kind of feel like the Knicks should sign just one more big body, preferably someone that could play the 4, because it just, I can understand wanting to go small and all this stuff, but sometimes you're just going to need a little more size out there. And I know that that's not exactly easy to find, but we did see some players, with decent size out there that signed for not terribly high amounts of money deep into free agency. And, a bunch of those guys that we went over on the show, as late free agent targets. And the Knicks didn't go after anyone like that because they seemed pretty resolute to be like, well, Josh Hart's good enough, at rebounding and stuff that it shouldn't affect our identity at all and it'll be fine. But, there is only so much you can do when guys have that length. Like you said, you're going to run into guys that literally can just barely jump on their jumper that Josh Hart can fully extend on and not really bother that much, and same applies to RJ Barrett. The same applies to pretty much anyone that the Knicks can throw out there that's not Julius Randle at that 4 spot. And that's something that I think is going to burn them this year and beyond if you run into teams that have guys that are skilled shooters at that 4 spot, or that they can situationally play at that 4 spot just to screw with you, like kind of like what the Celtics can do, where they can say, well, we could go big if we want to. Like, we can go extra big if we want to and make you put Josh Hart on Kristaps Porzingis or something. But we could also even just throw Jason Tatum back out there when you have Josh Hart out there. And then, there's pretty much nothing that a Josh Hart can do to bother a Jason Tatum if Julius Randle is taking his breather. Which if Julius Randle continues playing the way that he is, he would probably end up taking way more breathers than before. So that's sort of the other factor that plays into this too, is that if Randle is not going to be playing up to snuff and you can't play him 38 minutes reliably, then you're in extra deep doo-doo, because you were basically banking on that this whole offseason of, well, we only got to fill like 12 minutes without Julius out there. And now all of a sudden it might be like, oh, we might have to fill like 20 minutes on some nights where he's really not playing well, if this is just going to be the norm for him this year. Or even if he improves by like 20%, of not like 20% percentages wise but like just like plays like 20% better than what he's been playing so far, he's still going to be really bad and probably not be able to play nearly as much as you want. And that creates huge problems for this team, because I do think that they are undersized, and maybe they'll do fine on rebounding and stuff because they just have strong guys, but they will not do well enough as far as challenging shots. And that's going to be a problem once it hits like playoff time.
Yeah. And so here's the fascinating thing so far is that as much as I say that, and like we talk about this, it hasn't hurt them defensively yet, right? They're 3rd in the NBA in defense. And last year in the playoffs, it didn't hurt them. And I think it will take the right team to exploit this. I think the fear there for me is the right teams can ultra exploit this. And you could see a series where, like, look, the Celtics are going to give everyone trouble, right? Because they're just incredibly loaded. So maybe that's not the best example, but they're just going to be teams, and I think increasingly more, like, this is almost less so a concern for the immediate future and more so the distant future. But as time goes on, that can make the Knicks pay. And also just in terms of shot creation, like against the most locked in defense in the league, I think it's where you see the Knicks really struggle, because they're just small, and like other teams can really contest them and harass them in the way the Knicks just can't. And to your point on Julius Randle, like at his best, he's the epitome of what I'm talking about. Like he's really far ahead of his time in some ways, and that, like, he is absolutely skilled size. Like he can shoot it, again right now only theoretically, but in the past he could shoot it. He can bully you. He has moves. On paper, he's like an incredible switch defender. Like the idealized version of Julius Randle is kind of what we're talking about here. But again, if he's, to your point, if he's not that guy, like that's a big problem. And I think I want to hear your thoughts on this, Alex, before we wrap up the segment. I think we're seeing Josh Hart just completely worn down. And that terrifies me, because this Knicks team, like when they became great last year in the regular season, were great against the Cavs, it was because Josh Hart was brilliant. And it's not, I think it is less to do with the World Cup and more to do with him like banging bodies with bigger dudes, like every time he's on the court, or at the very least, it's a combination of those two things. And like, is he going to survive a season playing like that? Because part of it is just that he's not shooting that well. But I think the bigger thing is the amount of energy he expelled last year. I don't know if it's tenable for him to do that when he also has to bang with like power forwards on defense.
Yeah, and that was kind of my biggest concern with this whole experiment. Like, I think that this could work in spurts, but I don't think that it was an ideal arrangement to have out there for anything close to, I mean, it's not full time, but like even consistent part-time work as a four, I think is unfair to Josh Hart physically. And it takes away one of his biggest advantages, which was being the pest rebounding the ball rather than the primary rebounder of the ball. You know, it's a completely different role to be the guy that's out there as, you know, the three that crashes in and snatches the ball out of a bigger guy's hand and starts a break, just because of your really good rebounding instincts, versus the guy that has to be out there putting his butt into someone, you know, getting that box out, muscling around with guys that are like in some cases half a foot taller than you, and, you know, with over half a foot more of wingspan than you, and trying to, you know, figure that whole thing out. I think that I think it is, to your point, it's going to wear him down faster. And they really, I mean, the key point of having a Josh Hart is that he gets those less contested rebounds that he can just kind of crash in for at the last minute, and then has the energy to run down and just start a fast break and, you know, maybe finish that fast break or spray out to a shooter or whatever. And you do sort of lose that advantage a little bit if you hit a point where it's where he's having to be this primary big man defender like he has been so far.
Yeah. I think you also see it with another Villanova guy, and Dante DiVincenzo, where he's had his whole career, he's had real issues at the rim, but in Golden State that gets minimized because Steph Curry just ensures you're getting 2 or 3 wide open runs to the basket every single night. And the Knicks are the antithesis of playing with Steph Curry right now, right? It's clogged toilet offense. Even with the bench unit, the spacing is not incredible right now. Like we talked about last episode, playing Quentin Grimes there more, like that could mollify things a bit, but I just can't get the vision out of my head of Dante missing like a 2-foot push shot and then just getting swatted by Brook Lopez trying to dunk on him. And I want to figure out ways the Knicks can maximize him, because I like him as a player, and I think he's good, but I can't help but think the Knicks kind of doubled down on what made them good last year. And like, I will admit, like, that had me really enthusiastic coming into the year. Like, I wasn't really thinking about the downside enough. And now I'm seeing, like, maybe when FanDuel had that low projection for the Knicks, I'm seeing some of that downside, that they double down on this thing that, like, if you go too far in the direction of like heart and effort and hustle at the expense of like scoring ability, size, and athleticism, like you cross a point of no return. And I don't think the Knicks are there. I think what they do still translates, especially to regular season basketball, but the margins are really thin, and we're going to see what that looks like long-term. So let's come back, and something that would help those margins is the Knicks shooting better from 3. We're going to tell you how they can get that done. But first, we got to tell you, Alex, about our best friends in the whole wide world, our good buddies over at FanDuel. Because you can score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Personally, I'm a betting man. I like doing a little parlay. So let me throw one out there for tonight. I'm going to say Victor Wembanyama, because the Knicks are going to just throw shots in his face. I'm going to say he gets over 2.5 blocks. I'm thinking this is the ballsiest prediction of all ballsy predictions, especially because I haven't seen the Clippers game yet, because we're still in the past over here. I'm going to say Julius Randle gets over 20 points. I think Zach Collins is maybe the right matchup for him. And I'm going to say, just because I'm a fair man, Julius Randle also has more than 5 turnovers. So Wembanyama over 2.5 blocks, Randle over 20 points, Randle over 5 turnovers. Book it, make yourself some money by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off both the NFL and NBA season the right way. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, and we are back on Locked On Knicks. We beat around the bush, Alex, but so much of this comes down to the Knicks' ability to make threes. And when you're a smaller team, you really live or die by the three. And in retrospect, it was a little bit concerning that the Knicks shot so electrically from 3 of their first 2 games and only went 1-1. Granted, one of those losses was to the Celtics, but since then they have not shot the ball all that well, and we've seen things fall apart a little bit. How does that get better?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of shooting talent on this team, and they just are really cold at the moment. Like, I think that we've seen over the last couple of years, and I mean, I say there's a lot of shooting talent on this team, and yet if you looked at the total 3-point shooting numbers from last year, that would run very counter to that point. But you have to consider how poorly they started as a team last year and where they actually ended up finishing, which was just outside of the top 2/3 of the NBA. I think they were like 21st or something in 3-point percentage by the end of last year. But you had guys like Quentin Grimes shooting like well over 40% after the All-Star break. Jalen Brunson shooting over 40% for the whole season. We're now seeing RJ Barrett maybe turning a corner again, 3-point shooting wise, looking more like he did, especially on spot up attempts, like his sophomore season during the COVID year in 2021, 22-21, I should say. Emmanuel Quickly, we've seen what he can do if he's really on, and he's still been running, unfortunately, hot and cold so far to start this year from 3, but like, I think the talent's there. Julius Randle, who we've seen as well, can shoot 35% on good volume like he did last year, and shoot like 6, 7, 8 threes per game and shoot 35% on them. So they should be better in theory, especially because they've added Dante DiVincenzo, who's like a career 37, 38% 3-point shooter. So they should be better than what they're doing right now. And so far they're top 10 in taking threes, but they're pretty woeful 25th in making them, and that's per cleaning the glass. Which, I mean, you can find that stat anywhere, but I just looked on cleaning glass because it's easier to look at. They're shooting about 3 points worse from 3 this year as well. They're shooting 32.9% right now, and they shot 35.8% last year. So I think they need to just kind of focus more on quality of looks than abandoning the shot. And unfortunately, like the last couple games, it feels like they're a little bit starting to doubt themselves. It's not just Julius Randle out there hesitating on threes. Like, and maybe some of it comes from the fact that Randle has been hot potatoing to certain guys. Like, I really feel for Quentin Grimes, for example, who just lately seems to be like just kind of getting this late bailout pass from Julius Randle and then being like, I don't know if I want to shoot this. Like, this defender is way closer than he should be because we didn't really actually run any offense here. But I think that they need to sort of try to bottle up what they did in the first couple games, to your point, and look to swing the ball around more, look to get inside and then spray it outside. We were talking about getting to the rim more. That doesn't just translate to making shots at the rim and drawing fouls. That also translates to being able to kick it out to the corner and then have that guy either shoot it or kick it to the elbow 3, and then have that guy either shoot it or kick it back up top again, and then have that, so on and so forth until you find whoever the open person is. And the Knicks were doing that so well in those first 2 games and then have just kind of drifted away from it. They're also taking more middies this year than last year, which is mildly annoying. per clean the glass. I think they're at like 9% of their shots this year from long mid range, when that was at like 6% last year. So that's a pretty large increase in a shot that the Knicks had largely gotten away from last year, that now they seem to be just kind of, snuggling back up with like their security blanket. And I don't totally love that either, because I thought that they developed a really awesome shot profile last year, and this year are sort of diverting from it a bit through these first number of games. So I don't know, Gavin. I mean, again, maybe something about this changed in the Clippers game, but as of right now, I kind of just want the Knicks to start looking to get guys more open from three again. And that's probably going to require a little less ISOing, even if that means less opportunities, for example, for Jalen Brunson to score like 45 points again.
Yeah, I don't know if ISOing is the issue. It might be. I think to me, it's not ISOing that's necessarily the culprit. It's what do they do following the ISO, right? Like if Jalen Brunson gets to the lane and draws two, is someone making a quick decision after that? And we've seen Julius Randle, but honestly, it's not just him. Like Josh Hart is guilty of catching the ball from behind the arc and hesitating. Like those shots just have to go up. To me, it is about process over results. And I hope Tom Thibodeau is preaching that to this entire team like religion, and the necessity to, if you're open, you got to shoot it. And Quentin, again, we've said it a million times. I'll say it one more for good measure. Like Quentin Grimes should be getting up 10 threes a game. And that's a big number to some people. Welcome to the modern NBA. That's what the best shooters in the league do. And Quentin Grimes is in that category. He like whatever, like whether it is calling more set plays for him, whatever it takes. I'm even open, and this is maybe sacrilegious. Like we talked about this on our big preview pod, Alex. I'm open to even Evan Fournier getting some run with the bench, like particularly like in a world where RJ Barrett's hurt or someone else is hurt. Like anything to break open the quagmire that is going on in the lane. And you're going to sacrifice some defense if you play Fournier. And there are going to be downsides, and there are going to be nights where like things look really, really ugly if you're just trying to throw up as many threes as humanly possible. But I think all of that is a big part of it. I think this is circling back to the rim point, something I meant to say earlier, but like getting out in transition is a big part of it. Like in the preseason, we saw him do a really good job being very intentional about even pushing off of makes. We saw in the Bucks game where they pressed every single advantage. Like there's a play where Jalen Brunson just noticed that Marjon Beauchamp, who was guarding him, kind of tripped up a little bit after the play, and Brunson just took it and pushed and went right into Pat Connaughton. He got a layup, but that just as easily could have been the Bucks defense crashing and him spraying out to a three. They have to play faster. They have to make better decisions. Tom Thibodeau, like he said it after the Bucks game, like a lot of times, like guys are open and decisions just aren't being made quick enough, and passes aren't being made quick enough. So it's not any one thing, but I think it can be summed up as play faster and play more decisive and find ways to get more shooting on the floor for more minutes.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's about quality of shot too. And to your point, when I say like less ISOing, I don't necessarily mean less of using that as a mechanism, more so less using that as less using that as the means to the end. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
or the means to generate the ultimate shot, from that same person. Which I think that a lot of times when Brunson gets it, that's what he's looking for. And I don't totally fault him for that, because if he's cooking, he's cooking. And you want to take advantage of that. And sometimes that's like we saw in the Bucks game, that's all you can count on in a game like that sometimes. And like we saw in the Heat series last year and all kinds of stuff like that. But other times I think that it should be, hey, get Brunson going a little bit early, but then use that to leverage getting other guys going, because that's what can really carry you to the finish line some games, is if the shots stop falling for the hot guy that's taking the ISOs, that you have a backup plan and that you have other guys that are able to, make shots in that same game and hopefully, pull you to a victory. And as far as Randall, I mean, I think it just needs to come down to like, he needs to just kind of figure a lot of things out. We talked about the last episode that we did on Monday, related to fixing the Knicks, the things that he needs to do. But, he's a big part of it too, where he was at his best in those first couple of games, where even when he wasn't shooting well, he was drawing tons of attention from the defense and using that as a means to an end to get shooters open, which then created great swing sequences to find guys open. And now he's even sort of started to lose that. So we need to see a big time recommitment to that. from him and even from Brunson to a degree, not looking so much to just using ISO as a means to get himself a shot, but also to, draw the defense in and then bend that to, turn into a shot for someone else. So hopefully we'll see that. Hopefully we'll see the Knicks shoot more threes and get to the line more and get to the rim more and finish better. Maybe they will address the fact that they're a little too small. Maybe they'll get Grimes more involved. Maybe Julius Randle will get his stuff together. That's all stuff we talked about in these 2 episodes. But in the end, I think we could both agree there's a lot of meat on the bone to get better. And it's unfortunately just going to, it's just a matter of, are the Knicks willing to commit to it? And are they willing to, I guess, put in the practice time to break out of this collective slump that they're in, because they're just going to kind of need some better shooting across the board and just better execution across the board. And that's going to require just working harder to play in a more cohesive style. Because I think if they could do that on both ends of the court, they'll be in much better shape.
Yeah. No disagreement. Maybe again, I think I don't think we put a lot of effort into this episode. So you're probably listening to this. Hopefully everything we just talked about, you saw last night, and you're saying, you idiots, this just happened. They did it all. Great guess. You clearly recorded this after and pretended like you recorded before. Well, we didn't. We just predicted the future.
We're in the same wardrobe, so that's how you could tell,
right.
unless I'm wearing a dirty shirt.
Why would we do that? That would be a step too far. He's Alex. I'm Gavin. If you want more of us predicting the future, you can tune in to Locked On Knicks the rest of this week. Until then, be good. We will talk to you soon.